the way. Chris doing a great job there. Fantastic thumbnails. Maybe not a fantastic game. A little bit surprising. Welcome in. It is Thursday night, Audible Live. Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman, Dr. Jene Bramel, and we've got Browns and Bengals. And on the preview show, I made a lot of Browns fans upset, Bloom. And sorry, Matt. Sorry.
It's okay. It's Thursday night.
Bengals going to kick the crap out of them, and the opposite is now happening. So, Matt, give us a game update. What have you seen so far?
Well, they've actually been able to use the offense that they wanted to use, which is basically what they did last week early on. Chubb and Hunt basically pounding the ball, mostly Chubb, some passes to Hunt, and then some timely runs to him, and then using the play action rollouts. They're using the Jake Plummer Denver Broncos offense, and basically inflating the gutter guards. Have two big bowling balls that can run through that line, and then they let Baker Mayfield roll out and throw the strikes, and that's what he does, hitting Odell Beckham Jr. for a long pass up the left sideline. Sheldon Richardson has welcomed Joe Burrow to the NFL, letting him know that defensive tackles are faster in the NFL than they are in the SEC. And so he figured that out pretty quickly. He was under pressure, but he's made some good plays, made some nice throws outside. He and Mike Thomas actually have a little bit of a rapport that's been going on since camp, and you saw it late in the game. T. Higgins made a nice catch. A.J. Green's getting a lot of targets, but they're tough targets. He's made some catches, others he hasn't so much. Joe Mixon looks pretty good, considering that the line is awful. But right now it's really the Browns and their skill players. Kareem Hunt getting a nice little pass up the right sideline. Burrow had a nice touch pass up the left sideline to Ozuma, on a play where the cornerback got burnt. And there was really nice touch by Burrow on the ball. Mayfield getting some easy throws tonight, wide open zone looks, rollout plays, but he's making them count. Unlike last week where he had some open, looks that he couldn't hit, with pinpoint accuracy, which was kind of his issue in college, despite what the stat boys say.
I love those stat boys. Got to watch out for those guys in the analytics. Aaron Donald's not really that good. Oh, God. He wrecks games. Sigmund Bloom can wreck games. I don't know. Some segues are better than others. But Bloom, sure. I saw exactly what Matt saw in terms of Joe Burrow, thinking he can get it. I'm going to do the spin move and then, bam, just get crushed. It's like, okay, dude, we love you. Joe Burrow, you're awesome. You can't do that in the NFL. What have you seen tonight? You're on mute.
Okay, are we back?
No, he's not on mute.
We're back,
now
but I think
yeah.
Okay. What do we see? Like we said, Baker Mayfield functioning well in this offense, getting him out of the pocket. Odell Beckham roasting William Jackson III. That definitely had another chance at a touchdown. William Jackson grabbed his jersey, or we could have two Beckham touchdowns tonight. Chubb looking good, always taking at least two guys to take him to the ground. Mixon getting everything that's there as far as the running backs go. A.J. Green looks older. He does. He gets up off the ground like he's older. You can just tell that he's in that waning part of his career. Had a nice catch out of bounds, but he hasn't been doing as much. Burrow's just been forced to mainly throw close to the line of scrimmage. Did have a nice touchdown to C.J. Uzomah. Terrence Mitchell's not very good. Earlier on that drive, Terrence Mitchell wasn't very good, missing a tackle. So they don't want Terrence Mitchell to be out there, but he is. So that's a problem for the Browns offense. But really what you're seeing is the Bengals defense is not good. The Bengals defense is basically allowing the Browns to do what they want to do, which reflects on the Chargers offense from last week, and we'll see how they do against the Chiefs. Browns defense looking a little bit better, so that should put into perspective how good the Ravens are. And I just think with Burrow, you can see that he's under control. He's making good decisions, but it's really hard for him to push the ball downfield right now because of that offensive line.
Let's get into the injuries around the National Football League, talking with Dr. Jene Bramel. And, well, this one comes from Odds Bodkin. What do I do with Benny Snell? Yes, because James Conner, Dr. Gene, and maybe this happens and I just don't notice or don't pay attention, or maybe I've been drinking too much tequila. But, James Conner goes from, we'll leave the light on for you, Motel 6, and not participating on Wednesday, to fully, man, participating on Thursday. What in the hell is going on here?
It's the new Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. We talked about this a little bit last year, where the Steelers in the last well, mostly just last year, but seem to be more and more willing to allow their players to sit out earlier in the week and then return to full practice. You used to know that if a player wasn't participating in Pittsburgh on Wednesday or maybe even Thursday, that there was no chance of them playing. You could pretty much rule them out, and that's not been the case. It wasn't just Connor this week. Juju Smith-Schuster was out with, I think they called him a knee situation, and then Deontay Johnson was still missing time with his foot/toe situation. All three of them were back to a full practice. What we don't know, unlike the wide receivers, we know they're going to play and get their usual target share. Last week, James Conner didn't seem to have any significant injury that you could see during the game. Wasn't they didn't notify the media that there was an injury right away, and then he was ruled out, called questionable, and then ruled out later in the game. So we'll leave the light on for you. He's going to be the bell cow running back, and then we see Benny Snell looking a little bit better. I would have some more concern with Connor. Maybe there's not an injury issue going on there necessarily, but if he gets off to a slow start again this week, maybe Benny Snell showed enough that he's going to insert himself into the picture. The Steelers have never been a team that has gone running back by committee necessarily if there's somebody that's playing well. So we'll see what happens with Connor. Doesn't seem to be a significant injury. Definitely the full practice on Thursday would suggest he's going to play, but I'll let you guys talk about whether or not you feel like that's something that's, as we get closer and closer to the end of the week, whether or not he's going to get any sort of meaningful target share or not.
Yeah, Snell's going to get a chance to take that job, and he's going to. Gene, I don't like uncertainty. I don't like vagueness. And it feels like with this Michael Thomas ankle, it's vague because it went from he's got a high ankle sprain, we'll see if he can grit his teeth and play through it, to now he's going to miss several weeks because it was worse than anticipated. That makes me think, Gene, of how complex the ankle joint is. It makes me think of the fibula. It makes me think of things that this could not maybe just be 3 or 4 weeks. What kind of spidey sense are you getting here?
Well, I think the word vague is the one you use there. I mean, what does several weeks mean? It didn't look like a particularly violent mechanism of injury where his foot wasn't really trapped necessarily with his whole body weight turn on it. But, when that ligament is injured, the one between the two lower leg bones, there's not necessarily an ankle ligament. It's up between the two lower bones of the leg. The key is players just don't know right away. We've seen player after player after player over the years finish games with high ankle sprains before the swelling and the stiffness sets in and the adrenaline wears off. And then the next day and Tuesday morning really tells the tale. If you're really stiff, really sore, lots of swelling there, it's a significant injury. And, MRI is helpful, but it's really about how the player feels. So, maybe worse than anticipated means that, Monday morning in the locker room and Tuesday on the medical staff exam wasn't as reassuring as expected. Maybe they saw something on the MRI, and then it becomes a week-to-week thing. The reflex with high ankle sprains is always 4 weeks right away. And who knows what several means. So I don't get the sense that, we're not talking about surgery. The Saints haven't put him on injured reserve yet. This year, knowing that a team can put any player on injured reserve for 3 weeks and bring him back, if this was going to be a 3 to 4 week injury and they knew it was going to be that, then he goes on injured reserve. And we got a lot of time yet this week before that happens. But it makes no sense to wait him out through this week, put him on injured reserve next week, and then have him miss another 3 games unless they think there's a chance he can be back in 4 weeks. So I think it's unlikely that we're going to see him on Monday night, but we'll see.
Gene, talk to us about George Kittle, who's going to try and suit up and play with that hyperextended knee or knee sprain. They've got Jordan Reed, obviously waiting in the wings, and that seems like he's an important, that the tight end is a very important role in this offense. So the fact that they have a guy who's a former Pro Bowl player, although not very durable in the past, sitting there and waiting in the wings, it seems like this is an important decision for people to be able to make on Kittle.
Yeah. Kyle Shanahan is an underrated, I'll tell you, but I'm not really telling you type of thing. Went through this with George Kittle last year, and we saw it with Deebo Samuel recently. It sounds good. I'm giving you lots of information. He's another guy that says Kittle doesn't have to practice. He'll be back sooner than later. We're leaving the light on for him as long as we're doing all the Motel 6 metaphors this week. But time and time again, we've seen 49ers who we think have a chance to play that then do not. And Kittle is a tough player. He has played through significant injuries in the past. His knee condition last year was similar to this, but he was also dealing with a ankle sprain at the same time. So it's hard to know. I think this is another situation where the adrenaline wears off and things look totally different. Kittle actually didn't play that many snaps in the second half of last week. They just kind of had him in there in some higher leverage situations. And that was a situation where, the foot was up a little bit, but that was if you look at the still frame of that injury, a fairly sizable hyperextension. And you can see why these injuries are tough. And that type of, when we're talking about a knee sprain, it's probably PCL, and that is a difficult injury to handicap. Even the grade can confuse you a little bit. So a low grade injury could turn into a 3 or 4 week situation. Again, the stability of the knee is important. So, they'll give him a chance. They'll see what the swelling looks like. They'll see what the stability of the knee seems like. But I'd put him to the doubtful side of questionable as well, and then be very happy if we see him do anything at all on Friday or we hear something positive. But this is probably going to be Kyle Shanahan trying to stay positive, and then we find out that Kittle's not going to be able to go this week.
Our guy, very thorough, says Dr. Gene with that G.I. Joe chin. Grow a beard, you barrel-chested freedom fighter. And if I was drawing superheroes like I draw superheroes, they would all have chins like Dr. Jene Bramel. Chat room is on fire, bringing that funk. And we have multiple people wondering about A.J. Brown. We had Corey Davis limited. We had A.J. Brown no practice on Thursday with a knee injury. Dr. Gene, what's the latest?
Well, it's being called a bone bruise, and we never know exactly what bone bruise means. It could mean anything in and around the knee. It could mean there's some cartilage involved. It doesn't sound like it's that big a situation. But when Adam Schefter says week to week and unlikely to play this week, that has the feeling of, boy, you hope you see him back in week 3. I don't really see much chance he's going to play this week, but this could easily stretch out through the rest of September and hopefully not beyond. And it's a situation where they are going to allow him to fully recover because they don't want to put him out there and risk an aggravation of the injury, or for him not to be moving as well as he should be able to, and then risking some sort of cascade or compensatory situation. So bone bruise doesn't always mean missed time, but Adam Schefter is all but telling us that Brown is going to be out this week, and then we're hoping for him to return sooner than later.
Gene, Dr. Chow weighed in on the Chris Godwin concussion, and he said late week onset, so a Wednesday onset, can be an indicator of a multi-week absence. This one was a little bit odd, as we did not have Godwin go into protocol until Wednesday. Is there any chance he's going to face the Panthers, and should we be worried about a multi-week absence?
No, he's not playing this week. Multi-week absence, yes, only because prolonged symptoms after 48 to 72 hours mean that players are going to progress through the return to play protocol a little bit more slowly, and it means he's still got symptoms on Wednesday. So, is he going to have symptoms Thursday, Friday? It's hard to know. But, generally speaking, a player diagnosed with a concussion on Sunday, those players that play the following week are those players that do not have symptoms on Monday or Tuesday and are very rapidly sent through the early stages and hopefully successfully of the return to play protocol, such that they can be cleared for contact by Friday or Saturday at the latest. And that is just not going to happen with a Wednesday injury. Could it be a multiple week absence? Yes, it certainly could be. I don't want to make any judgments on whether or not that's more likely or not. It's very much a day-to-day, symptom-to-symptom scenario. So you would think that, the injury very likely happened on Sunday. I mean, there were a couple of hits that looked suspicious, even though he didn't present with symptoms until Wednesday. So that's a 72-hour symptom after an injury. So, yeah, I don't know if we want to go too far in advance and say he's doubtful for week 3 yet, but until we see him allowed to do some sort of light exercise, we have to assume that there's symptoms there that's going to keep him from progressing. So don't expect to see him at practice on Friday. He's likely to be cleared out very early on. Maybe they leave him doubtful on the off chance that something happens this weekend, but he's not playing this weekend. And yes, I agree that week 3 is somewhat in doubt at this point.
Gene, I want you and Khalil over from Krypton to have a conversation and some dialogue about Philip Lindsay and his toe.
Yeah, it seems like the Broncos really want to be cautious with this, and toe sprains for running backs are tough. You can put an orthotic in the shoe. You can sort of do the best job you can with taping it up, but it's an injury where any sort of additional hyperextension is going to be a problem. Melvin Gordon is there. Royce Freeman is there. They've got other options in that offense. I think this is a situation where rather than run the risk of this lingering week to week, month to month, probably makes more sense to, because this didn't seem to be as severe as they thought it would be, go ahead and give him the extra week of rest, bring him back a little bit more slowly, and hopefully you get him back healthier sooner than later because you're taking that approach. So I don't know if you've heard anything differently there, but my suspicion is we're not going to see him this week, and then we'll consider him questionable for week 3.
Yes, I believe that would be correct, and maybe even a little bit past that. The speculation is now he'll miss a couple of games at least, and then we shall see. So again, we'll keep that eye on Denver. It is a Broncos show. So Dr. Gene, I was going to ask you about Cortland Sutton, and I've been out at practice. I haven't seen him do jumping jacks, which I don't know if you would medically advise. Like Vic Fangio said, he needs to do 10 jumping jacks, and then he can play. So I'm like, okay, what if he hurts himself on jumping jack number 9? All right, coach. It's always difficult to tell if Vic Fangio's teasing or not, or if he's paying attention to timeouts. But looks like Sutton might give it a go this week. What are you feeling here? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, he needs to be cleared for contact. So I think that's the hurdle that we're seeing with these players with AC sprains and contusions up in that area where there's pain and range of motion issues. If they can't be cleared for contact with or without harnesses, padding, pain management, whatever is necessary, then they're not going to be able, you're just not going to be able to play. So it sounded like he was close last week, but they weren't sure whether or not he'd come out the other side of the game from Monday night successfully or not, allowing him to continue to recondition and practice. I think Friday's participation is going to be key here. If they do clear him for contact and he does any sort of full range of motion and full practice at all, then I think you're going to see him probably listed questionable, but for the probable side of questionable. And I'm at this point, I think I'd be surprised if he's not able to go.
Gene, should we expect to see Jamison Crowder out there? If he does play, should we be worried because he should get half of the targets against San Francisco? The Jets don't have much more. And should the Jets just take a forfeit if he can't play because that's not fair to Sam Darnold?
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see, just watching this Chubb run here. Maybe it's a good thing that shoe came off. That was kind of a nasty looking turn of the ankle there. I don't think Jamison Crowder is going to play. What we don't know for certain, this certainly seems like something that happened in practice on Wednesday, which puts him in a similar situation to Kenny Golladay and so many others. Midweek muscle strains, you just don't really have a ton of time to recover and get ready to play. If it's an aggravation of the already existing injury, then there's no chance at all he plays this week. And then we're worried, like Golladay, about whether or not week 3 and beyond are an issue. So I'd consider him doubtful. The DNP after, you'd think they'd try to get him out there a little bit if it was just a minor situation to see how he responds to a back-to-back practice. Maybe there's a limited practice on Friday and a questionable tag, but I don't think we're going to see Crowder this week. Good luck to Darnold.
I'm just having fun here watching Nick Chubb. So Kenny Golladay, tell us a little bit more about Golladay, and do you think he's going to play this week? I know it's like asking, the KGB about their plans, but but it's one of those deals where I'd still like to learn a little bit more, because Quintez Cephas, he had 10 targets last week. So
yep. By the way, the chat room says Matt looks like a cat watching birds when he's watching Nick Chubb.
Yep. That's about right. I lived with too many of them. There we go.
Oh, we had a conversation last week about, are we already looking forward to Nick Chubb making his way out of Cleveland? So it's nice for him to get a little bit of run, although it's against Cincinnati's defense. Definitely KJB like in Detroit, but there was some indication that, they've said, Patricia himself has said that we're going to be a little bit cautious with this. And that's pretty much all you need to know. If the Lions are admitting that they're going to take their time, they're all but telling you that not playing this week, and this could easily be a 3 to 4 week situation if they're already saying that they're going to be cautious. So did not practice last week, has been nowhere to be found on the practice field, not even working and doing a little bit of conditioning on the side. Some players, when they're listed as DNP, we hear that they're over there doing some resistance work or conditioning work. Golladay is not even on the sidelines doing anything at all. So pretty much no chance he plays this week. You'd be shocked if you see anything. A limited Friday practice probably just makes you more comfortable that there's a chance he plays in week 3. But this has the makings of a little bit of a longer term injury. Could easily be a 3 or 4 week situation.
Spinning you around the National Football League, and Brian's right. I want someone to look at me like Matt looks at Nick Chubb. That's true love. And we love talking to Dr. Jene Bramel. I don't believe we talked about Chris Godwin yet, Gene.
Yeah, we did.
What? We did. Okay, we talked about Godwin.
Yeah,
Evans, did you throw in Evans?
No,
did you throw in Evans in there? Because that's people are excited. Okay, if Godwin's down, could be a huge week for Evans, especially given the matchup. So if Godwin is down, what's that mean for Evans? You expect him to look better because he played through his injury last week.
And there doesn't seem to be any sign of a setback. I forgot exactly what I wrote here. What was the percentage that was? So he had 93% of the snaps. It was only 65 snaps, but it was 93% of the team snaps. Only had 4 targets, but that doesn't include 2 pass interference penalties that he drew. I don't think he looked entirely explosive, but I do think he made it through the game without any obvious setbacks. Has been back-to-back limited practices already this week. Says he feels better this week than last week. Went from arguably doubtful and out on Friday to playing 93% of the snaps on Sunday and seems to have come out okay. He's not out of the woods yet as far as an aggravation risk may go, but yes, it looks like there's every indication that he's going to play full time, and hopefully what we saw last week was the beginnings of him trusting himself and feeling a little bit better so that he is a little bit more explosive in a situation where he's likely to get more targets because Godwin won't play.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's fine. We've got a lot to ask. Spinning Dr. Gene around. Doc, leaving aside Aaron Donald against some poor soul named Nate Herbig, Miles Sanders is going to play. He's got full practices. And now that we see the Wednesday full practice and the Thursday full practice, does that give us more context to him missing week 1? Maybe not as something to be worried about the severity of his hamstring injury, but actually a sign that the Eagles said, let's play this safe. We have a whole season ahead of us. Should we have any hesitation, again, aside from Aaron Donald, playing Miles Sanders this week?
No, it appears that way. And who knows what all went into the Eagles' decision-making last week, whether or not they felt like they were going to be able to handle Washington without a full complement of running backs and felt like Clement and Boston Scott would be able to handle things okay and knew that they had enough other pass-catching options underneath to be successful. Whether or not that had anything to do with that or not, we'll never know. But you would like to see, generally speaking, players take a full week of reconditioning and then come back to full practices doing things full speed to put them behind the risk of re-injury. We know time and time again. I mean, half the players we've talked about tonight, we've talked about already aggravating injuries, Jamison Crowder, among many others, and those that are at risk of that happening because they've only been in limited practices and not back to full speed gameplay yet. And you can't recreate what goes on game day in practice, but you can allow players to do everything you ask them to do and put them in padded situations by which they have to dynamically react to what's going on around them. And that's the hurdle that Sanders is passing these next couple of days. And all of the optimism we heard last week and then being disappointed we didn't play, add that into a week of full practice. And maybe we're not going to hear this week, and we certainly didn't on Wednesday, like we did last Wednesday, that Doug Peterson says we're probably going to have to limit his role. I don't know that we're going to hear that at all. The Eagles are highly motivated not to go 0-2. So as long as Sanders makes it through Friday's practice fine, feels okay in the first couple of series, he could get those 18 to 25 touches that we didn't think he was going to be in line for last week, even had he played.
So give me the Julio Jones rule that you're talking about in your injury report.
Yes. So that's if you are new to having Julio Jones on your fantasy team, or you are new to the Atlanta Falcons injury report, the tea leaves on Julio are really simple. We don't really care if he's listed with an injury. We don't really care if he's limited in practice. If he is full on Friday or taking off the injury status report altogether on Friday, it's all systems go. There's a small risk of an aggravation. He always has some issues that come up during the game, but he always gets the full targets when that happens. If he's limited and questionable, then we have a little bit of a concern. If he's not practicing and then he's questionable, then I think we have to be a little bit nervous. But they will put him on the injury report to allow him to notify everybody that he's getting a little bit extra treatment or otherwise, and not be concerning. Not only is that the case this week, but Julio was talking about a ton of things in the locker room today, how he felt, some social justice issues. That doesn't happen for a player who is not preparing to play. So barring an unexpected setback on Friday, all systems go for Julio again this week, regardless of whether he was limited earlier in the week in practice or not.
One more time, spinning around Dr. Jene Bramel here on the Audible Live. And I want to know about Henry Ruggs and the knee and your confidence level.
Yeah, that's another player that left the game early and then came back and played pretty well. It had the look of an MCL sprain, the ligament on the inside of the knee. Players will sometimes return to the game. Not a lot of times you won't see a skill position player do that. But again, swelling, stability issues, recovery in the 48 hours after the injury, hard to know. Not surprising that they held him out in practice. They may be planning to bring him along slowly. They have the benefit of waiting until Monday night, I believe. Are they Monday night? Is it New Orleans and Las Vegas Monday night?
New Orleans and Vegas,
so, so they've got another day with which to bring him along a little bit. Like Kittle, like some of these other players, it is possible that there's more of a situation now than there was on Sunday, and that he's not able to go. But, I think we'll see with practice participation. What you hope is there's a limited practice on Friday, and then he's able to do a little bit on Saturday so that you can trust that he'll be available on Monday. But I think he's questionable. I don't think this is as simple as saying he finished the game last week, looked okay, and he'll play this week. This injury is enough that there's something going on there, and he has to feel that his knee is stable and able to go before they'll put him out there. So we'll see what Friday and Saturday's practice looks like.
Gene, what was your favorite thing from week one? Moment, quote, play, something, anything that made you happy?
I have grown to love watching Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I think, like everybody else did. So I think that was fun. I didn't get to watch as much. I was one of the many folks that got dealt a surprising hand from Spectrum when they yanked NFL Network off the package that you had and didn't tell anybody. So I'm still waiting to get in touch with them to see if that was happened. So I was stuck watching. I don't even know what the game was. I think it was thankfully Baltimore and Cleveland. That was the only game that was available to me in the morning. And then I watched the New Orleans game after that. I got a little bit of Minnesota Green Bay. So there wasn't much to watch, but it was just nice. And thankfully there weren't a ton of injuries to talk about. The Marlon Mack situation was unfortunate, but I'm hoping that everybody comes back healthier sooner than later.
Okay, Gene, here it comes. 3 favorite ice cream flavors that soothe the savage beast.
Oh, you're killing me, Smalls. Well, you missed it about an hour ago. I was enjoying a chocolate shake, so we'll stick with any versions of chocolate as we go.
Okay, there we go. That is always good
Savage
advice.
Fussy
Coming
beast.
from the barrel-chested freedom fighter known as Dr. Jene Bramel. By the way, very thorough, says he wants you to say, knowing is half the battle.
That sounds like a cliche I would never say. Knowing is half the battle?
Yeah, that's all G.I. Joe sign-off.
Well,
Dr. Gene did not watch G.I. Joe.
No, I didn't. You know what? Not so much, actually.
I watched too much Batman animated series and Darkwing Duck and Tiny Toons to go to class in college. So, one, it tells you how old I am, and 2, it just shows you Dr. Gene's like, knowing's half the battle. What is that? That sounds like a bunch of crap.
Because it's kind of a Cleveland show tonight, I'll say that back in my days in Cleveland, what we did with G.I. Joe was light M80s. Under the G.I. Joe.
Oh, yeah.
In my apartment complex with all the Russian immigrants and the Italians, we basically, there were M80s just straddled all along hill, all used up M80 shells. So, yeah, G.I. Joe certainly was the victim of a lot of M80 warfare. Yeah.
Yo, Gene. Follow him on Twitter at Jene Bramel. Check out his injury report at footballguys.com. Dr. Gene, appreciate you, brother.
I can't tell if I enjoy you guys more or the chat room tonight. It's a close.
They're ahead right now, man.
Oh, they are so far ahead. They're on fire, dude. They're totally on fire tonight. So
good luck, everybody. Until next week. Save the chin jokes.
There we have them. A toast to Dr. Jene Bramel, ladies and gentlemen. We got a 21-13 ball game. Joe Burrow's got the ball right now, but Sigmund Bloom, we need a game update.
The Browns go all the way down the field. Looks like Nick Chubb scores. He doesn't. Then he gets 3 shots from the one, and Mayfield looks for Beckham, and they don't score. So goal line stand by the Bengals now. Joe Burrow is trying that 99-yard drive to answer. So some intrigue here. It's been a quarterback battle, which made it a more entertaining game. But the Bengals defense, after really putting up little resistance in the first half, found their nerve and setting this up for an interesting game now.
An interesting contest and an interesting debate, because Bloom, when you said Benny Snell's going to take the job, Matt Waldman was shaking his head. So I'm just going to sit back and be like, let's watch this thing and know this. I think all three of us, when Benny Snell came out of college, I know Bloom, you and I wanted Darrell Henderson. At least I did,
Yeah.
right? I really wanted Darrell Henderson. I was so upset. I was like, Benny Snell, like, guys, he's got like no nuance to his game, no wiggle to his game. And then he dropped some LBs, something that we all should do.
Yeah.
And now looks better. That backfield's still complicated. Still Anthony McFarland there, who I know, Bloom, you and I have a debate on what McFarland can do. That's fine. We've been debating since the days of Willie Parker, so that'll continue. Yes, him too. So, Matt, why shake your head? Do you believe that Connor will get this job back, keep this job? Is it Samuels? Is it McFarland? Is it a combination? Like, what's going on here?
Where I'm shaking my head is that the thought that Benny Snell played better, or outplayed James Conner last week. He outproduced James Conner last week, but I don't think he outplayed him. And the reason being is that James Conner basically got looks with fronts where the defense cut off basically all three paths that he could possibly take as options on most of his carries. And when the offensive line got rolling, Benny Snell happened to be in there. Now, Benny Snell had a good game. That's nothing to take away from Benny Snell at all. And, now the narratives that he's quicker and he's faster than James Conner, again, I think if you watch the film closely, what you would see that because you're seeing him get to actually run through lanes, as opposed to James Conner, who was looking for lanes or having to fight off players to get into lanes. Benny Snell is going to be a little faster this year because he's actually quicker at processing information. Why? Because he's no longer a rookie. And he also got a full off season of training from an NFL, organization. So he's going to be a little more explosive. I like Snell. I think that Snell has a potential, as Bloom said, to take that job if Connor puts up another goose egg and has a rough start this week and he doesn't play well or he re-injures that ankle. But I think that James Conner, it was very hard to tell that he even injured the ankle because he just started kind of limp a little bit. And then he kind of took himself out of that game. And it might have been the smart play early on to do that so that he could heal up. It was a minor injury, it sounds like, for him. So they feel like they can tape it up and let him go. And to me, I think the real thing, if I'm going to give ground to the idea of Snelling being possibly the guy, we're going to find that out if Connor is healthy, and now we get a chance to see him this week and how he does with the carries that Snell obviously is going to earn to at least be in relief, which I think people thought that anyhow. But to say that Connor wasn't as good, to me, is not accurate based on what we didn't see.
Okay, well, first I'll say Nick Chubb got his touchdown. Myles Garrett strips the ball.
Welcome to the NFL, Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and get that clock going a little faster. And the football gods giveth here. There's justice, and now all of a sudden the Browns look like they're cruising. This is what I'll say about James Conner. There is no way to read week one as a positive for him. Okay, if he wasn't hurt, then that makes him not being in the game seem a little bit ominous. And we may even take the "we'll leave the lights on for you" in a different sense. A lot of people saying Connor seemed upset on the sidelines. Who was he upset at and why? Was he upset at the offensive line for not opening holes, as Matt Waldman points out? Was he upset at the coaches for ruling him out? Or who knows? All I know is he opened the door to competition, and Benny Snell ran through that door with help from the offensive line. So if Connor was hurt, and that's why he didn't show anything along with the offensive line, then he's already broken the injury seal. And what do we know about James Conner? Once the injury seal is broken, he doesn't go back to being the back he was before the injury seal is broken. Or he wasn't hurt, and now you just have to wonder what's going on here. What are these vibes all about? And none other than Ed Bouchette, since we talked about this morning, said Connor will go back to being the starter as long as he can play this week or maybe next week. But Snell can absolutely take this job from him. And Snell showed enough that they probably won't use Connor as quite as exclusively as they would have before Snell did that. So it's a fluid situation. It's a changing situation. And the nature of these backfields in the NFL, what I've found over the time we've been doing this all together, is that it's like inertia. Once that initial inertia is overcome, it will take James Conner is going to have to do something heroic, I think, to slow down the inertia, and he's capable of doing that. And the Steelers are facing Denver this week. Denver's run defense is a little stout, but I just feel like at this point, especially if Connor's still being valued a lot more than Snell. So that's the interesting thing, right? If we were drafting today, where does Connor get drafted? Because you were seeing him sometimes sneaking into the second round, certainly a third round pick, and a lot of people feeling like they got a great third round pick because he was a late first round, early second round pick last year. Roethlisberger's back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now, would he go in the fifth round, in the sixth round? Would he go before? Go ahead.
But yeah, and I think that's a fair question to ask. And I think the sideline stuff is quite pertinent in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of, that it could be a negative for him either way as a possibility. Though you could also look at it as a team said, you know what, we want him to play the entire season, so we're going to take him out early in this game where we know this defense isn't all that good. We can get this thing together with Snell, and we can let Connor rest and make sure he's healthy so that when we really need him, this can go to work. Because you didn't see Snell really catch a lot of passes. You don't see Snell as a pass protector, and that's the things that Connor does really well, and none of those other guys do at this point. So that's very important for them. So they probably were riding that out. And then you can also say, and the other thing that I'd say about the fantasy standpoint is it kind of like, well, would you have drafted, there are a number of players you could ask that after week one where we overreact one way or the other. And then 2 weeks later, we're like, well, yeah, I think maybe we would. Just like in the roundtable, we have guys who are talking about that very thing, about valuing players and going, maybe it's best to value your preseason rankings as opposed to what happened after week one. And that's an interesting thing about that.
Interesting that neither one of you seem to mention the other back. So we're just looking at a two-headed backfield.
Yeah. Well, I think that Samuels is a passing down back, maybe a little bit of a gadget back.
Samuels is a passing down back that they'll never use the right way.
I know. Well, hey, Matt Canada called him an amoeba. Matt Canada coached him. Matt Canada is the connection between these two.
Matt Canada coached Anthony McFarland.
Yeah, exactly. He coached them both, and so with Anthony McFarland, you'll see jet sweeps and things like that. So I think that you're going to see them both have specialized uses, but they have their two guys, and Snell becomes real interesting in dynasty leagues now with Connor a free agent next year, and I don't know where he's going to play next year. I don't think it'll be Pittsburgh.
If they could get Samuel to another team, maybe he could reprise the old Todd Christensen kind of H-back thing where you basically slide out in the backfield about 6 to 7 yards and catch 100 balls. That's kind of what I think his skill set leans towards. He's a good running back for a tight end. That's or a big slot receiver. That's how I'd look at him.
Right. Right. And hopefully Antonio Gibson doesn't turn into Jalen Samuels. Yeah. So can the Peyton Barber thing keep up? We've talked a lot about Peyton Barber on this show. Matt, we'll start with you. How do you see the Washington backfield? Again, not overreacting after 1 week, but what do we see? What do we know?
He's a bridge, and like Malcolm Brown, he's like a bridge to these other players developing and taking over for them. They're competent backs that the teams know can get the short yardage, know where the holes are supposed to be, how they're supposed to develop, and sometimes make the first or second man miss or break a tackle to get what's blocked, or sometimes get what wasn't blocked, but not much more than that. Whereas guys like Antonio Brown and Bryce Love, they have much more athletic ability, or Antonio Gibson, excuse me, has much more athletic ability and much more promise, but they have to learn the system. They have to be trustworthy in terms of making the reads. And so that may take anywhere between, 2 to 4 weeks for some. Maybe Cam Akers, it takes that amount of time to get better with zone blocking, or, in terms of running that scheme, and maybe getting better with the certain pass protection calls because we know he can block. And then with a guy like Antonio Gibson, again, he was a slot receiver like Tony Pollard. They used him in that way, and he's a fine runner, but he was more of a gap style guy, and he's got to get used to protections. He's got to get used to all those types of things. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think that at minimum, we're looking at the next 2 to 4 weeks that Barber's going to be a value to people, but you're not counting on him for anything other than maybe a flex play, or a bye week option on your team.
Windows, Bloom. That's what we always talk about. And Odds Bodkin wants to know if you're a deadhead. You're a fish head, dude. And you like the windows of which fish shows you can catch during this week.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That was our whole life was planned around fish tour announcements, basically. Look, okay, sometimes assuming rational coaching can be very foolish. but it's so clear that Antonio Gibson has more to offer than Peyton Barber. And Peyton Barber's still going to play good assignment football. And, I think it's just a question of Gibson earning that trust. And we're always thinking upside. We're always thinking best case scenario. And the best case scenario here for Gibson is that he turns into the back that gets 20 touches a game and also gets used creatively in the passing game, which, as we talked about on the preview this morning, Cease, with Raheem Mostert taking that ball to the house. Can't you see Antonio Gibson running a similar route, or try it? Let's see. See what he can do in the passing game, not just as a runner out in Arizona this week. So I still think that even though Gibson is a letdown to the sense that you're not going to play him, if you played him week 1, you got a little over your skis. You're probably not going to play him in week 2. You still have a season-changing potential outcome. If he'd gotten those goal line carries and he'd gotten 2 touchdowns last week, we would be saying he's an auto start. So the point is that the Washington offense created the opportunity that we're looking for, and it's just a question of Gibson seizing that opportunity. As long as Peyton Barber is 17 for 29, at some point, the calls to see what Gibson will do will be too loud, and then it'll be up to Gibson, which I suppose should always have been what you based your choice of whether to take Gibson on or not. It's just your evaluation and how he's going to translate. But I still think it's way too early to give up on him. And certainly I would be trying to buy low. If someone got him early in the draft season where they got him as a 12th, 13th, 14th round pick and they're like, I don't know what to do with him now, especially if you're hard up and you need some upside at running back, Gibson's best days still to come.
And I loves me some Joe Burrow watching this game. And guys, Matt, I'm sorry to put this out there for the football gods, but if Burrow could lead him back and win, it's 28-13 right now. Bengals are threatening, and I love when he gets in this mode, right? It's like they waited last week.
Yeah,
Bloom,
why
we
did they
talked about
wait?
this. They waited to get in this mode with Joe Burrow. Matt, shouldn't they just be in this mode from the coin flip, basically?
Yeah, but I think the problem with that is that, one, they do want their game plan to actually try to make it work so that they can give him easier opportunities. And they can't just play in kind of like halftime 3-minute mode pretty much throughout the game. But at the same token, if your offense isn't working, and this is an offense that's focused on precision. Yeah, I mean, let's just put it this way. Zach Taylor is a Sean McVay clone. Sean McVay, when his offense is working, Super Bowl. Sean McVay, when his offensive line is injured, banged up, and filled with rookies and so-so players, they sucked. So he moved to Cincinnati, where their line pretty much sucks. So there you have it.
Bloom, what are we watching here as Cincinnati? Did they get in there? Did they get it? Yeah, they got in, right?
I hold on. I actually don't have it in front of me because of the configuration of the room. At my
Bernard.
place.
Is it Gio? Did Gio get
Bernard.
in, or was his knee down?
Good question.
Looks like he's in. Looks like he's in.
Yeah, I believe they ruled that he's in. Hey, this is definitely something where Burrow, in some ways, needs this to find his comfort zone. I didn't meant to bring this up at the top of the show, that they didn't come out in that kind of mode, or at least give him a drive like that. He got him down the field for a field goal at the end of the first half in a similar fashion. I think that it just is his natural rhythm in the game, and we'll see. We'll see how Mayfield responds. The defense basically gave them a do-over on that touchdown that they missed. So I want to ask Matt Waldman this though, because we're getting into psychoanalyzing coaches, right? McVay and Shanahan. I was bringing this up on another show I did this week. What do you think of the fact that McVay brings in Brandon Staley? See, you know Brandon Staley a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brings in Brandon Staley. Handpicks his defensive coordinator. Wade Phillips out the door. And what Brandon Staley did was gave them a defense that changed what they signaled, basically, like give you one look and then at the snap show you something else. That was kind of the hallmark of their defense against the Rams. Do you think there's any psychoanalyzing there of McVay knows that's what trips up him and his offense, so he thinks that's what trips up his opponents?
I mean, I would think that makes sense that they would look at it from that perspective. I think it's a pretty simple answer of that's reasonable thinking. I mean, I think anybody who's a coach is probably thinking from firsthand information in addition to maybe other data, from scouts and other information that they have, football clinics, stuff like that. So we have to remember that Sean McVay also does a lot of work outside of pro football, where he's working with college program people, along with guys like Kyle Shanahan and working with him in the offseason. So they all talk a lot of shop. So I don't think it's just merely him in his bubble, like thinking that. I think it's more him based on everything that he's seen.
It is the Audible Live, footballguys.com. We got about 10 minutes left in tonight's program. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you out there. Now, Matt, I got James Robinson and Fessel OG. Nobody cares about my fantasy team, but what did I get? I spent $250 of $500 to get him, but I got him, and I needed him because I lost Marlon Mack and Phillip Lindsay after I waited on running backs. Well, so I was hurting bad. I think I got like Gibson and now James Robinson, and holding on, praying. What's the real Jacksonville here? They're a little more scrappy than we thought. Not tanking for Trevor like we thought.
It's going to be interesting to find out because you can Bloom and I think both have talked about him in the past week in terms of his waiver wire article that you obviously is must read at Football Guys, and then my replacements article that comes out on last Friday, just as he's a start now guy that maybe many of you didn't know about. Kid out of Illinois State, low to the ground in terms of low center of gravity, short, but a thick running back, starter running back size from basically the chest down, and he can catch the football. He's someone that can bounce off hits, run through reaches. He's going to be able to push a pile a little bit. He has excellent burst, elite burst probably, and that's very important. Burst and change of direction are far more important than long speed, which he doesn't have any of. So he's kind of like, at worst, I would say he's in that Peyton Barber neighborhood. At best, he's a little better than that. And we're going to find out with the Jaguars because their receiving core, I think, is highly underrated. I think Keelan Cole is coming on, and we saw what he was able to do 2 years ago before he lost confidence and regained it. DJ Chark is an excellent player. Laviska Shenault's is starting to show up, and even adding if Tyler Eifert can keep the strings on all those joints and that back tied up pretty well, kind of like a good pork roast. Maybe he can stay healthy too, and that will help this offense a lot because they had a lot of nice scripted plays, but I have to think that the Indianapolis Colts just really did not show up to play as well as you've seen them play in the past. And Phillip Rivers was part of that because Phillip Rivers, man, he's going to have some good weeks, but I thought, the decisions he's making at times, I mean, he should have 3 interceptions in that game. And it's just kind of toast at that point. He's kind of toast in some ways. He has some velocity issues throwing the football now that are even more exacerbated than even in his prime. So with this team, yeah, I think you get a guy who's going to be as good as the Jaguars are at staying in the game. If they can stay in the game, he can give you running back 2 production, maybe even on a weekly basis. If they don't, it's Chris Thompson time until he's not healthy, and then it's somebody else's time like Dare Ogunbowale, even though, James Robinson can catch the football. So he might still be a flex play at that point, but we're going to have to wait and see on what the team feels about with him as a pass protector.
Bloom, they took away the Geo touchdown, right? And
yes.
Myles Garrett is they didn't call that helmet-to-helmet contact on Joe Burrow as Burrow misses Tyler Boyd. Burrow getting just crushed out there as they took the touchdown away. Now it's going to be 3rd and goal, something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after a penalty on Carl Joseph. Reset the downs.
Is he Turkey Jonesing him yet?
Ooh. Well, Burrow's nature is he's going to take those hits. Unlike Kyler Murray, everybody around the league marveling at how Kyler Murray can run so much and never take a hit. So, something to think about is Burrow, again, with the welcome to the NFL moments.
Interference.
Yeah, that's what we're getting here in this one. I hate when they take away a touchdown like that. Like he was in. It looked like it. I mean, slow it down to the millisecond and maybe the ball wasn't across the plane, but I don't know. Just watching it here, doing this show. We're doing it live as
no call.
we're wrapping up tonight's program as the Bengals are begging for calls now that they're not getting. So here we go. Eric Ebron's trust level Bloom this week is...
If you don't have a tight end from last week on your roster that you're happy with, go ahead. A lot of the breakdown looking like Ebron did get extra attention, even though he did that ball clank off of his hands. It was just a wide receiver night against that giant secondary. Denver, as you've chronicled over the years, Cease does not defend the tight end well. It would make sense if Ebron got 1 or maybe even 2 touchdowns this week with Roethlisberger looking good, although let's watch that Steelers offensive line. Seeing Zach Banner go down. Looks like the rookie Kevin Dotson, I believe Louisiana Lafayette, former bouncer, trying to keep those Broncos from getting in the club with Ben.
Yeah, there we go. Matt Waldman, any tight end that you like? If, let's say, you've got your injuries at the position, you're not happy with what you had out there?
Yeah, Greg Olson's still kind of hanging around a lot of leagues, and it's like people keep thinking about Will Dissly, and that may be a possibility. But to me, it's like, basically looking at chocolate and peanut butter with these two guys, with Russell Wilson and Greg Olson, because they both love to work up the seam. They're both very good in the red zone in that area with that type of throw, and they connected against Atlanta in that fashion. And I think that with the way they're using 2 tight end sets a lot, to go kind of both guys on the wings, sometimes spread them out and use them in the slot or outside, and kind of morph between 2 tight end and 4 wide receivers using those 2 elements. Olson's always in the game, it seems like, and he may not get a lot of opportunities, but he's a high leverage guy.
You had to love, your ears must have been ringing today because we were talking about you so much on the preview show.
4 times or 5 times.
Yeah, 5 times. But when Belichick says that about Russell Wilson, that's the ultimate respect, dude. It's the ultimate respect.
Yeah, he means it. Bengals settle for a field goal here.
Yeah,
I don't like that. I would like the in-game tactical decisions Zach Taylor was making, right? Go for it on 4th and 4, like at the opponent's 35. That was a good one. Taking the timeouts when the Browns were running the ball, goal to go downs inside the 2-minute warning to save time for Joe Burrow. I like that. I think at this point, with the way their defense is playing, you need touchdowns here. And I would rather they just went for it. And if they stop you, that's great. You get them backed up. Hopefully something good can happen. I'm afraid at this point, if the Browns get a touchdown on this drive, game over.
So I have a question for you guys, just because I saw this earlier on Monday night and it made me laugh. And it was one of our listeners saying, whenever I hear Cecil and Bloom go off about Eric Ebron, I laugh, and every time I or when Eric Ebron drops a pass, I hear Cecil and Sigmund, and every time I hear Daniel Jones does something stupid, I hear Matt Waldman scream, "He's a fraud!" Yeah. So I'm just wondering if we had a virtual dartboard of players that actually would have pictures of players on our dartboard, at least according to perception. Who else would be on each of our dartboards here?
Can we put coaches on there? Because Pat Shermer's on mine.
It's becoming obsession, Cease.
I know. It's becoming unhealthy. It's becoming like, Cecil, would you please not do Broncos TV anymore? Like, it's bad, man. I mean, Rich Scangarello knew he was coaching for his job, knew Vic Fangio didn't like him, allegedly, or whatever I have to say. And he went out and the offense scored about 24 points a game, except for the KC game in a blizzard on the road and whatever. It's KC. But 4-1 with the starter is Drew Lock. And then Shermer, with pressure on him that I don't know if he knows, comes out and scores 14 points at home against Tennessee, who can't rush the passer. And Clowney was getting some pressure. Right. So we can talk about that. But, Shermer, you should have come out and dropped 35. Come on, man. Come on. And what he's doing... Here's a little lassie bark for you.
Ooh.
Is it good for a young quarterback who maybe is not as comfortable reading the middle of the field to be forced to know everything within the playbook and not just do what he can do right now and then give him more as the season goes on? I'm just saying, I don't know anything. But if I were to ask you guys, wouldn't you like a coach theoretically to give a quarterback a little, here's a little more, here's a little more, here's a little more, instead of saying, here's everything, why don't you know it? You're stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, Cecil, that I'm sure you taught your son Liam how to ride a motorcycle by having him basically gluing the throttle down to 90 and tell him to go 60 miles in 25 minutes. I'm sure that's
It was like, actually, that
you
is
had
what
him
we did.
do. or like kind of like Ricky Bobby with the Cougar, I guess.
Yeah.
There we
Something
go.
like that. Yeah. If you're not first, you're last. Bloom, who's on your dartboard?
Well, I'll say the coaches is Adam Gase, and it's too easy.
Oh,
Adam Gase, he's like I said, he's a straight up comic book villain now. I mean, he's the evil maniac who has control, and you feel bad for his hostages at this point after put Le'Veon Bell back in the game. I just want Le'Veon come back to Pittsburgh. Everything's fine. Let's put it all behind us. Make some beautiful music together again.
yeah. Benny Snell's not going to be the starter because Le'Veon Bell's coming back. There you go. By the way, Adam Gase, I know which villain he is with the Batman poster behind me. Batman is a new villain called the Designer.
Oh,
who like just sets things up. He like screws everything up basically,
right.
for everybody else. That's who Adam Gase is.
In my house, we just call that me.
All right. By the way, our chat room before we're out of here, Matt, they said they missed your bike. They're like, I miss Matt's old setup. I think it was Waterboy. Waterboy was talking about that. He's like, where's it at? Where's
the bike?
At?
The bike is downstairs. We're going to be redoing the basement one day to have like basically a football office and cave down there to do lots of stuff.
That's going to be the ultimate cave, dude.
Yes. But so for now, this is kind of my makeshift area. And right now, instead of that in the background, I've got this red desk that basically almost killed me and ruined my career in the past couple of years because I was a dumbass to use it. And then let's see, back here, I have a keyboard because I'm kind of getting back to doing some music. And I actually have a horn back here that I bought recently. And I'm practicing. It's kind of like learning Spanish and almost being fluent in it a long time ago, like almost 30 years ago, and then never speaking it or hearing it again. So I'm kind of relearning, but I'm having a lot of fun. And that's kind of what the setup is right now. And I'll probably be here for another couple years, I think, but that's fine.
You got to put your fantasy takes to music, or at least like write instrumentals and name them like players or something.
People complain enough when I actually have good musicians playing behind it. So I've decided to leave that alone. But that's okay. I do have a friend who does some scoring for some HBO stuff now, who's a big fantasy football head, who has great music in there. And he suggested the same thing to me. And I said, yeah, I tried that. And he has great taste, but whatever. There we go. He has a great Gene Simmons stories. I'll have to show the thing to his blog. A bet about that Gene Simmons apparently didn't know who Quincy Jones was, and people didn't. And they were in a studio together, and he said everyone knows who Quincy Jones is, and Gene Simmons made fun of it, and he basically bet him a base that they go out in the street in New York City and anyone would know who he is, and Gene got to pick who they were, and even the two people in a row knew who he was, including a 50-year-old woman who basically was friends with him because the street was all like filled with music stores from the old days in New York. So they all knew who Quincy Jones was. And basically, Gene Simmons got his comeuppance by an 18-year-old punk who happens to be my friend and writes for motion picture industry. Now it's hilarious. I'll send it.
You know what the original name of Kiss was? Sorry, Joe. I'm not going to say.
Do you know the original name of Motley Crue?
No.
Christmas.
Do you know the original name for 1 O'Clock Jump by Count Basie? You probably wouldn't, but it's a funny original name. Blue Balls.
Oh.
That's a sorry, Joe. That's a demon.
No, it's just about balls that are blue. Come on.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're totally mature on this show. And I went from drinking some tequila to coffee. So there we go. That's a wrap for tonight's program. We love you guys. We appreciate you all. Do all those YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's watch the rest of this game. Let's see if the Bengals can make that comeback. Probably not. But either way, follow us all on Twitter at Jene Bramel, at Matt Waldman, at Sigmund Bloom, at Cecil Lammey. And the show is at the Audible. The moans and groans.
Baker Mayfield, you get an interception. You get an interception. You get an interception. He's on my dartboard, by the way.
Ooh. Yeah. Every time I see a Baker commercial, I'm like, dude, work on your game.
Exactly.
Work on your game.
I want the commercial to be one of where he gets evicted I want there to be a parody of him getting evicted. Ever since I saw the first one, I've been waiting for the eviction episode.
Oh, all right. We get it done at the highest level. Thank you guys in the chat room. You guys were on fire. It's incredible. Incredible night. Incredible. I love you guys. Appreciate y'all. Everyone out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.